I'm an enrollment counselor at CCU. So yeah, also on here we have Skip. He's my boss, associate director. Skip, you can introduce yourself because you'll do it better. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get started. And Skip, if you want to take it from here.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. I briefly lost internet service, so I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. But my name is Skip Crust. I am the Associate Director of Recruitment at Colorado Christian University. And my job is to work with the enrollment counselors and help them do their jobs really well. I'm glad that you guys can join us. We're going to have some folks joining us here over the next few minutes, but for the sake of time, we do want to get this party started, so to speak. So I'll pray for us this evening, and then we'll turn it over to our distinguished faculty and our students who will introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about them, and kind of lead this session this evening. So let me begin with a word of prayer, if I may. Lord, we thank you for all that you're doing, and we thank you for the work that you're doing in CCU, at CCU. And I pray that you would be all over this night, that you would allow us to hear from you about your will and purpose for our life, and whether or not CCU is the place for us. I pray that you would give us wisdom as we think about the majors that we would consider, and all of the things that go into choosing a college. Thank you for our guests, both students and our faculty, and I pray that you would be with us this evening. In Jesus' name, amen. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Bulci and Dr. Scheffel. Would you like to introduce yourselves, and then maybe the students can take it from there.
Great, Tammy, why don't you go first?
So I'm actually Professor Bulci, and I work with the elementary education program in the School of Education. And we put our students out early in the program. We're very excited about it. I have worked every job just about. I taught every grade, K through 8, and then I went on to be a high school guidance counselor, high school assistant principal, and then the high school principal. And I've worked in public ed, I've worked in Christian education, and so I have lots of experience, and so it's absolutely my privilege to get to be at CCU and train the next generation of teachers. So that's who I am.
Thank you, Professor Bulci. That's awesome. We think we just have the best faculty of anywhere, just because of their specific experience in public and private education, their heart for Christ and for the next generation of teachers. And you know, Tammy's one of the very best, so we love her, working with her and the rest of our faculty as well, and appreciate her being on tonight for this group. I'm Deborah Scheffel, Dean of the School of Education at Colorado Christian University. I've been at CCU 6 years. I have spent most of my career in education, in traditional higher education and secular. So in Colorado, for example, I've been at the University of Colorado, Denver. I've been at University of Northern Colorado, the University of Denver, and I've been at several for-profit entities, University of the Rockies, Jones International University, and then I've been in 6 other states doing this work previous to that, all in education, all around how can we help the next generation be successful and fulfill their potential. And then in the Christian context, how can they do that against their potential in Christ and walking with him through life. So we really appreciate the work we do here. We feel like we have wonderful programs. The distinctives are that our students are in the field very soon after they declare their major in their freshman or sophomore year. We begin the field work experiences so that they really can get a sense of if they like education or not, and what grades they like and what areas they like. They might want secondary or elementary or special education or physical education or other areas. So we really try to give a range of options for our students. I think at this point, really, this is just an informal time for Q&A, and Professor Bulci and I are here to answer questions and help flesh out any details that would be helpful as you make your decision and think about a future at CCU.
Great. Well, let's have our student panelists also introduce themselves. Tell us, where you're from and how long you've been at CCU, and what you expect to do within education as well. And then kind of the way we'll work it is for our guests, you'll see that there's a chat feature that's been enabled in your Zoom box. And if you have any questions, you can type into that chat feature, and then one at a time, either Katya or myself will toss those questions out to one of our panelists here today. So let's start with Karis. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
All right. Hi, I'm Karis. I am a junior at CCU. I'm originally from Texas, and I transferred from a school in Texas to CCU my sophomore year. I am a science education, so I really want to teach middle school science. That's my big passion right now.
Awesome. And what about you, Savannah?
Hi, I'm Savannah. I'm from a small town in Texas also, and I'm in the elementary education program. So I want to teach anywhere from like K to 3, so young little babies. And I am a second year student, but academically a junior because I took dual credit classes in high school that transferred in. So it's my second year at CCU, but I'm taking junior classes. So.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Mackenzie.
Hi, so I'm a junior. I'm originally from Anchorage, Alaska, and I'm a special education major. I hope to be in a high school setting as a life skills teacher within special education.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, good. Thank you. So the first question actually will be for Professor Bulci and Dr. Scheffel. What Joseph would like to know, what states Colorado shares reciprocity with and for certification, and what is the breakdown for grades for the certifications? I'm not quite sure what that means, but maybe you guys do.
Sure, I'll take it first, and then Professor Bulci, you can fill in. State accreditation or authorization is the gold standard for schools of education so that individuals can get their initial license in teaching from schools that are accredited through their state Department of Education, and then they can go to any other state, present that initial teaching license, and then get a license in that other state if they decide to reside in Texas or California or whatever. Each state can have distinctive requirements. For example, Texas requires Texas history, and every state can have additional limited requirements to add to bringing a license, to apply for a license in another state. But our licenses are fully accredited by the state of Colorado and the Colorado Department of Education and the Department of Higher Education, which is the gold standard for that kind of authorization. So our students can take that initial license they earn after they've completed our degree successfully, take it to any state, they will recognize it, and then that state may say, great, we recognize your license and we will issue you a license, but first you have to take Texas history, or first you have to, that's kind of the one that comes to mind. There might be a minimal requirement, it just depends on the state. But as far as reciprocity, we have reciprocity with all the states. The students present their initial license, as long as the student then takes the specific distinctive that the state requires. Professor Bulci, do you have anything to add to that? I know you've had a lot of experience with students taking their licenses to all over the country and successfully getting licensed. Never had anybody turned down because our programs are approved.
No, I think Dr. Scheffel has said it well. We do have students, I can think right off the top of my head. I know I have students teaching in Texas, in California, Minnesota, Arizona, New Mexico. And so Dr. Scheffel has said it. I would just say that one of the things that really has helped our students well, and particularly our program, Joseph, is a K through 6 elementary degree. And we get a liberal arts degree. So CCU requires a lot of foundational classes in English and social studies and math. And it really bodes well for our students as they transfer to other states. And that's certainly been what we have found. And just as Dr. Scheffel said, we have had I have students in Texas who went down and they do get a provisional license. And then within that first year or two, they have to get the Texas state history class completed. So every state does have something like that. But the strong base education you get at CCU and the breadth of our requirements in our majors really have done well for our students as far as transferring to other states.
Awesome. And as far as those specific accreditations, and I'm speaking a little bit out of school, you guys are the experts, which is why we have you here. But is it specifically for K through 6 or just for K3, or do they have to get a special certification or license within a specialization in Colorado or in a specific state?
Well, as Professor Bulci said, it's K6 for the elementary degree. Special education is K12. Secondary is 712, and physical education is K12. And so, you take that program range, that whatever grades it is, and that is the license you present to the state that you're entering and seeking licensure in.
And how does students find out what their state requirements are?
Every state has a Department of Education. You go on the website and look up initial teaching licensure, and there'll be many pages to look at. We also have documents that try to summarize that information, and we also work with students when we know where they're going and want to take their license. We often help them, kind of navigate that next step.
Yeah, great. So you had said that one of the distinctives of our program at CCU is that students get into the field, into the classroom pretty early in their program. So for our student panelists, what has that looked like for you? And how much time have you spent in the classroom in your respective years? And what does that look like for you? And also then maybe talk about what it's been like to balance, to be off campus, in the classroom, all of those types of things. Who wants to take that?
I can take that.
Sure.
I also just wanted to add, when we're talking about the years that we cover, for specifically SPED, you get K through 12, but you also get an elementary licensure. So if anyone's on here that's in SPED, you also get that licensure as well. I started in the classroom my freshman year with younger students. Most secondary education majors don't start until their second year here, their sophomore year. So of course, with COVID, things changed last semester, but I've got about 70 hours under my belt, and I won't do any student teaching my junior year, but then I'll have field 3 for first semester next year, and then student teaching straight through my last semester here at CCU. As far as being on campus and then transferring to in the classroom, I think it's cool to see what we've learned in the classroom and how to, in our classroom, and to apply it within the schools that we're placed in. There's also a lot of guidance. You have your staff advisor, but then you also have your school-based teacher and another advisor as well that I'm forgetting the specific name for. So you get a lot of guidance with lesson planning. You have to do 2 lessons within your field, at least for field 1, and then as you go on, it increases. But yeah, I think that's probably the most interesting part about it, is just being able to put what you've read in your textbook into a actual setting and be able to apply that.
Awesome. Karis or Savannah, what would you add?
I got to work also my freshman year in a classroom, and I was with 5th graders and loved it, loved having the experience. I will say I never felt unprepared. There was so many resources that we had that were very easy to get to, like very like communication lines always open, and it was so much fun to get to immediately start doing the thing that I love, and like the reason that I'm going to school here was to teach students. So to not be consistently reading about it and to be having the experience also was really encouraging and helpful, and helped me love the program even more, just because I was getting that experience.
Karis?
I only have about 50 hours under my belt. I took field 1 my first year here, and I'm in field 2 right now, but that looks a little different. I think we're going to be online for the most part. And if we do end up going in person, that'll be awesome. But right now we are just planning on being completely online, and which I think will help with us learning how the technology works, and just how to be able to engage students through the technology. But all of these, like how much we get in the field, how much experience we get, that's what stood out to me about these education programs.
Awesome. And then for our faculty, how has COVID impacted how we're doing field education this spring? I think Karis touched on it a little bit, but I think that there's probably an impact that's maybe even a bit bigger than that.
I'll make a quick comment and then I'll throw the ball to Professor Bulci, but obviously we're taking the lead from the schools. We're guests in these schools when we ask our students to come and partner with partner schools as well as our faculty in the schools to gain the kind of experience that they need. And given COVID, many of the schools have been partly remote, fully remote, on and off remote. And so we have, I think last count, we had 50 partner schools that we work with. That's always adjusted a bit depending on the year, but we have a number of schools in the Front Range we work with, so we have lots of options. And as far as where we place our students and the genre of education they're exposed to follows the lead of the school. And so given COVID, we are doing a lot of field hours remotely because we have to, and that will shift once we've gotten through the pandemic. And I don't know if you want to add to that, Professor Bulci.
Yeah, so we are working very closely with schools. So our seniors are very fortunate. So in the elementary program in particular, they have the students get about 50 hours that first year, about 50 the second. The third year, we bring students onto the CCU campus and they get training in both reading and math. And then senior year, they go out to one classroom for the full year, 2 days a week in the fall, every day in the spring. So the good news is that the school districts have said your student teachers, that's our seniors, may be in seat they may come in and teach the students in seat if we're in seat. So the fascinating thing is that our seniors have gotten an experience in it all. They're often teaching students in front of them and students who are online. It's actually been a great experience for them. It's a lot to manage, but it's been a great learning experience. And our seniors that are graduated mid-year here in December were getting snatched up because they were able to manage that. Right now, students are field students in the freshman and sophomore year are going to be matched up virtually to schools because that's the way schools prefer to manage it. And their supervisors can actually watch them teach either live on Zoom, or we have a voice thread where a student can film themselves, watch themselves teach, make comments on it, and then the supervisor can watch it with them and also critique it. It's been a great tool and a great learning experience. So we just shifted on the fly, and they have been grateful for our school partners that have continued to include us, even though we would all much rather be face-to-face with students.
Of course, yeah. We had one question from a student related to, or a prospective student related to transfer credits, which I'll be happy to address, and dual credit courses. We do accept transfer and dual credit courses at CCU. You'll need to talk with your enrollment counselor in specific about which courses, and we can also speak with our Life Direction Center, which is our advising center, about which courses will come in and which ones won't. So if you have any specific questions about that, you can talk with, like I said, your enrollment counselor. And Katya is one of our enrollment counselors. And so she, if you work with her states, then she'll be the one that you chat with over the phone. But again, we're happy to do that. In most cases, if you have courses within a particular field of study, for example, if you have, we don't have too many students that come in with education courses from high school. Sometimes they'll come in with transfer credits, but most of the time we want you to take all of those courses at CCU. If you're an education major, you'll take all of your education courses at CCU. So now those courses will transfer in potentially as elective credits. So again, a bigger conversation with your enrollment counselor is probably warranted. So, so I know that this is going to be a question for that many of our prospective students have. If you don't have a car, how do you get to your field education? And I know, Mackenzie, thank you for replying. I want to provide the question so that her answer makes a little bit more sense. But how do we match students up with schools if they don't have their own transportation on campus?
So one of the things we do in field, there's actually a lot of schools that are very close to CCU campus. So We work really hard to, our younger students stay fairly close to CCU, but we match them up to schools where they could walk. However, we like to send a cohort to a school, or at least 2 or 3 others, so that they can ride together and go into the school and come back and ride back to campus together. So we do coordinate that so that, because we do always have students who do not have transportation, and we're happy to work with them and figure that out.
Great. So here's a question maybe for our faculty. If a student wants to do a study abroad program, some majors at CCU, it's really easy to just kind of slip in, and some majors it's not. With the field education that students have to do, how does a study abroad program fit or not in a CCU field of study?
I'll comment, and then again ask Professor Bulci to comment, but we have a number of students that do study abroad, and summer is of course a great time to do it. As far as fitting it in during the academic year in the 8 semesters, it is a little challenging just because our program is very tight, and because we have to align with state requirements, and we want students to be able to finish in 8 semesters or less. It's somewhat challenging to fit it in, but you can always do it in the summer, and if you depending on if you transfer in credits, that can help you. I mean, there's a number of variables that can make it flexible enough to make it happen. Do you have other comments on that, Professor Bulci? Because I know there are many students that do it.
Yes, I think that earlier that you decide that you want to put that in your program, the better. And so the LDC is wonderful to sit down with you and figure out your credits and how you can fit this in. Dean Scheffel's absolutely right. Bringing in some transfer credits, or maybe planning to pick up a winter term here and there, or some summer classes that you can transfer in, also buys a little more space in the schedule. And so it is possible. We do have students who do that, and they take a semester abroad. Many of our students choose to do the summer programs where they do missionary work abroad. So it does take planning. So the earlier you decide that, so the LDC can help sit down with you and figure out that schedule, the better.
What do freshman education courses look like? What could an incoming freshman expect to take that first?
I'll let you take that, Professor Bulci, first.
Okay. Well, all of our freshman students generally, well, I'm going to talk about the elementary ed program, and then I'll talk about the secondary and special ed, and some of the students will know that well too. So in elementary education, we usually have a student take field 1, either first semester or second semester, and that is actually a class that has the field hours associated with it, where you go out into the school. And we teach you how to write a basic lesson plan, how to approach a school professionally, how to work with children, and we scaffold it knowing that our freshmen are not going to be able to do exactly what a senior would do, but you're already ready to go out and help and be Christ's legs and feet and mouth out there in the community in a school. So that class is one of them. We also have classes like children's literature, and that's often taken. Children's psych, that's also taken. And secondary, I'm going to speak briefly on that. We don't generally put our secondary students out in the field freshman year because they just left secondary school the year before. So we give them 1 more year of classes and experience before we put them out in that sophomore year. So freshman year secondary, I'm going to think most of those classes are in their major field, either English, social studies, science, and so on. And special education, I believe they also do a field 1, similar to what I was talking about for elementary. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep, that's right.
Great. This one I'm going to toss out to our student panelists. How would you guys describe your workload as students? How do you balance all of the things that you have going? Do you have any extracurriculars that you participate in, like athletics or student activities, or do you have a job on or off campus? How do you balance all of those things, and and also find time for fun? So who wants to go first?
I can take that one.
Okay.
I personally do work on campus and love it. So the way that I do it is I'm very type A. I love my planner. If you work with calendars, that's my favorite thing. I just typically map out a week and I know my limits. And so there's some days that I have to say like no to going to dinner because I just need something done, or vice versa, and say like I'll put that off a little bit because I do need some time with my friends. So it's a lot of like knowing your limits, and that sounds kind of funny, but you'll feel that out. I have a job on campus and I work 10 hours a week and balances really well. I've also had a really great experience with the School of Education working with that. I went and talked to my professors and I said, hey, it's not optional for me to have a job, like I have to. So how does that work with field experience? And they were willing to cooperate with me and work through that and figure out a schedule that would work with me and that would be helpful to me. And so I felt very prepared in that aspect. I also did discipleship this year. So I was a D group leader, which is something our freshmen are in every year. And it worked really well. And I enjoyed that also. So it is definitely possible to manage the workload and to do all of that. And just like learning those time management skills is very important, but it's definitely possible and not something that's like crazy to do. It's common through my friends in the education field and for myself also.
Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Karis.
So I am a commuter. So I spend anywhere from an hour to 2 hours a day in my car, just going to and from school, depends on traffic. I'm science education, so I take all the pre-med science classes, and I work 10 hours in the School of Education offices. Like Savannah said, a planner. Really, even if you don't do it right now, it's very, very important. Just get a planner, make sure you know when things are due. That way you don't miss anything. And again, like Savannah said, there are some nights where I have to decide, am I going to get this homework done, or am I going to be able to hang out with my friends? And that's just really, it depends on you personally. And I think that's what you kind of figure out your first year of college. It's part of figuring out how to be an adult. You got to figure out when you need that social interaction and when you really need to get your work done. And I think that being able to do that with other students at CCU, being able to figure that out with my friends has been really helpful.
If I could also add something. Okay, because yes, I also work in the School of Education with Karis, and I'm an RDC this year, which is a leadership position in discipleship. And I also work 30 hours every weekend at an off-campus job. So yeah, time management is very important. But I will say, as far as the School of Education goes, I would say that the workload for School of Education classes specifically is not bad, because most of what you're doing is discussion-based things or case studies and learning how to better teach within an actual classroom. So it's not like you're reading 100 pages every night, which is really nice because you have to think on your own how to problem solve, because once you're a teacher, you're a teacher. The training wheels are off. And so that part is really nice. I would say most of your course workload is going to come from your gen eds, which I will say CCU has a lot of.
Yep, that's the beauty of attending a liberal arts university, right? So good. Well, this one I'll ask of our faculty. How easy is it to adjust programs? If you start as an LEd major and then you want to do secondary or you want to do special ed, how easy is it for students to switch within their program and still graduate on time?
I'll take that one first. You know, I think our programs, because again, they're authorized by the state, they are rather tight. So we want to get students in the track that makes the most sense to them as early as possible. But that being said, we do have students that come in and decide that they want to go a different direction. We always work with them to find the right niche so that they're going to be teaching the level of student in the right subject area that really resonates with what their passion is. So I think we do a good job of advising together with the LDC and mentoring and really kind of looking ahead. And then that's the benefit of the initial field courses, because once you start working with children, you can, or adolescents, I think you do get a good sense. It pushes you in one direction or another. And that's also why we have dual endorsement programs. I think Mackenzie was mentioning she's in the special education licensure program, but she will also earn a K-6 elementary education endorsement as part of that degree. So then she's got two options right out of the chute. Our students also get an endorsement in working with students who are culturally and linguistically diverse, whose first language is not English, who are in the elementary program if they choose that route. And so that again allows them to have two opportunities when they graduate. So we're trying to always think about efficiencies in our programs to serve our students the best we can. And Professor Bulci, do you have something to add?
I think you did a nice job. I think it is true that the earlier you decide, the better, but we don't always know until we give it a try. And so that's why field can be a great experience to see what it really feels like to be on the other side of the desk. Because we get a double licensure in both special ed and then, as Dean Scheffel said, the double licensure endorsements in the elementary ed program in both K-6 and culturally and linguistically diverse education, it is pretty tight. But if a student takes a field in one of the areas, secondary, elementary, special ed, and they decide maybe they would like to switch to the other program, we're going to sit down and we're going to visit with you and we're going to figure that out together. We want you to get the experience in the new program, but there will be enough carryover that you may not have to redo the whole thing. We can figure that out and figure out where you're at.
Have any of our students, any of you three, changed your focus or field in terms of education, or are you guys kind of going where you picked initially?
I've stayed the same since starting, so.
And I'm guessing Karis and Mackenzie too?
Yes.
Yeah. Great. So back to our students. Why did you guys pick this program? I mean, there's a lot of universities that are out there that have elementary ed or secondary education programs. There's even good ones within the state of Colorado. Why did you choose CCU? What is it about this school and specifically the education program that made you choose CCU? Let's start with Mackenzie.
Okay. I knew that I wanted to go to a Christian school just because I feel like at this time in our life, faith can be kind of a fragile thing. And if you're not firm in it, you could be easily swayed. So I knew I wanted a Christian school. As far as the education program at CCU, I liked that it was a smaller school because I'm not just a number scrambling to get notes down in a big lecture. Instead, my voice is heard and I'm able to share my opinion and question things and have that be accepted and be able to talk with my professors. I actually sat down with Dean Scheffel earlier this semester and we talked for 45 minutes just about the education system and questions that I had. And I think that is so special to be able to have that experience here at CCU. Also, most schools, you're not in the classroom until your senior year. And then if you're in the classroom and you realize, oh, this isn't what I want to do, well, then you're a senior. So where do you go from there? So that's another big bonus is being in the classroom our first semester.
What about you, Karis?
So I knew what I wanted to teach and I kind of knew what grade level I wanted to teach, but I also knew I wasn't going to be able to find that specific kind of degree in Texas, because in Texas you have to usually major in the science you want to teach. And so I got on my computer one day and I just Googled science education degree, and CCU was the first thing to pop up. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And so I clicked on it and I just loved how you get, for the science education degree, you get you cover biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, physics, you cover all of it, and you are then prepared to teach all of it. I loved how you weren't pinned down to just one degree, and I think that's for most of the education degrees here, you get more broader content area that you can teach. And I also really loved how many field hours we get and how we start so early, because that is very important. Like Mackenzie said, if you get into a classroom, you're like, oh, I actually don't really like teaching kids this stuff. What do I do now? There's not much you can do. But specifically for the education program, what I have loved in the past like year or so is a lot of the professors teach multiple classes. And so they really get to know the students. Like they all know my names, and it's not just because I work with them every week in their offices and stuff, but they all know my names. I'm not just a number. And they're always willing to either meet with students if you have questions or just get a cup of coffee and talk about their experiences. And I've really loved getting to know all of them and just kind of feeding off their information.
And Savannah.
So my story is kind of similar to Karis. I just kind of was looking at education programs. I wanted to move away from Texas just to get a new experience. And I mean, the scenery around here is a lovely bonus that we are right next to the mountains, and it's really a great thing. But the other thing is the accreditations for the School of Education are phenomenal. So just on paper, take out all of the classes, take out all of that, just on paper, the School of Education just looks phenomenally prepared and looks like it can be somebody that can really prepare me to go into a classroom and know what I'm doing. Bring the classes and everything back in. It's very relational, just like Mackenzie and Karis have both said. The relationships that I've developed with my professors have gone beyond teaching me facts and telling me how to do things. I've learned by example, I feel, in different classes simply because they develop a relationship with me and they know my name. And something as simple as that goes so far, both while learning from them and learning how to teach myself. So learning things like that by example is something that I experienced while I was here that I love and that I have valued so much, because I know that if I needed anything, if I needed a recommendation, if I needed a day to just have a cup of coffee, I can go to these people and find mentors and find role models and also find phenomenal professors and teachers in the specific field that I have.
Woo. You need to work in admissions, Savannah. Oh, wait, you do. So
I love
Savannah's
it.
one of our student workers. She said she has a job on campus. She actually works in our office. So, okay, now before I ask the next question, I'm going to solicit some additional questions from our guests because we're approaching sort of the end of what you've already asked. So if there's something that you're dying to know or that you're thinking about, I'd love to have you throw that in the chat box. But for Dr. Scheffel and Professor Bolchi, what is we had our students talk about why they chose CCU. Why did you choose CCU? What is it that you love about the university and love about your job? And what is it that you love about the School of Education at CCU?
Why don't you go first, Professor Bolchi?
So I have a little interesting background to my introduction to CCU. I was a principal, and so I actually found out years later that I was the principal that sent the most students to CCU. It just happened. I was in a high school about 70 miles from CCU. So I had a relationship that way. And then my husband and I have 4 children, and our 2 youngest attended CCU, and they graduated from the elementary education program. So they were never there at the same time. I was never there when they were there, but as soon as they graduated, I ended up going to CCU. And what I love about CCU is the community. I love that I do know my students, and they know me. And so we live in a community, and I love that I don't have to check my faith at the door, but that I can be a whole person. And it really is infused in everything I say and I do. And that's just delightful. And so, and then of course, Savannah alluded to it a little bit, and I'll let Dean Scheffel share, but CCU does have a strong reputation for preparing students very well for the community. And we've gotten some accolades in the last few years that we humbly are appreciative of. But I think what really attracted me to CCU is the community. excellence in education within a very wonderful and loving community.
Yeah, and I would say I had family members also come and graduate from CCU, two nephews and a niece. And so I kind of had it up close and personal to understand their experience. I was in secular higher ed and decided to come to CCU really because of the opportunity to combine faith with learning and academic pursuits. I think it's such an unusual opportunity, and many Christian schools sometimes don't do either one of them well, even though they're trying to do it well. And I felt like CCU was doing a really good, legitimate job of addressing important academic and intellectual questions that are so relevant to our culture, but also doing it in the context of a true, authentic Christian faith. And I've been trying to do that my whole career on my own. And the opportunity to do that in the company of others is just such a rich experience. We have wonderful faculty, really great professional development, excellent speakers, excellent leadership that take all of this very seriously, believing that we want to impact the next generation for Christ. We want to impact our culture, the marketplace of ideas, with ideas that are consistent with Scripture. And so to be doing that with others that think deeply about these issues, want to write about them, want to speak about them, want to engage in the intellectual discourse around those issues with students who want to then go out into the world and make a difference for Christ, that's very compelling. I've always found it to be something that I had sought after. And so when I got the opportunity to do that at CCU, it was such a great decision.
Yeah, I love that. And I like to tell students and prospective families that there's a difference between a Christian university and a Christian university. And we are very much a Christian university, not just in name, but in practice and everything that we do in terms of preparing students for a life of serving Christ and in his name, in whatever field we happen to be practicing in. So, I have a question for our students. If there was one piece of advice that you could give to your 18-year-old self about preparing for college, what would you say? Ooh, that's a really, really good question. Who wants to tackle it first?
I'll start. If me and my 18-year-old self could just have coffee, that would be ideal. Let's just talk through lots of things. But if I could say it in a nutshell, for one, I'm only 19, so 18-year-old me is not very far away. But pre-college me, one would be everything is going to be okay. I was very nervous just about the transition, about moving away from home and what I had always known. And it pushed me to try to over prepare, and I just needed to calm down a little bit, enjoy your surroundings, enjoy what you're in right now, because the season of transition does not last forever. Once you're here, and that's great, and it's a good season, and I love it, and I'm thriving. I love my life here, but just enjoy like what's going on, enjoy the preparation, and remember that time. And also, Miss Belchie has seen me get on my soapbox a little bit about this, but do all the things. Enjoy yourself in the season you're in, enjoy yourself in high school. Because we're a Christian university, I can say that if God was done with you in your high school, then you wouldn't be there anymore. So be useful there and be involved there and love that. And then when you transition, love that summer, do all the things. And when you get here, do all the things, be in discipleship, get a job, get lots of jobs. Don't get a job at all. Like do everything you can and be involved in all the things, do all the things.
I love that. Karis or Mackenzie, would you care to add anything?
Okay, Karis, do you want to go and then I can go? Okay, cool. I was not like I feel most CCU students where I couldn't wait to get out of the house. So I rushed it and I couldn't wait to be a junior like I am now. So I would just say enjoy your freshman year. If I knew how much free time I was gonna have my freshman year compared to what I have now, I would have done a lot more. So especially as an education major because you're gone your whole last semester pretty much. You're not in chapel, you're not really on campus. So you almost like lose a whole semester of your college years because you're moving on, you're being a grown-up, and that's great too. But yeah, I would just say like take in every moment and yeah, don't be afraid to be yourself, I guess, because I think there are some like snap judgments of Christians on campus. And so I would just say embrace who you are and don't be afraid of that. Find your people and love them well.
And Karis.
Well, when I was 18, I was still in Texas at the local community college, and I was still living with my family at home. But I would definitely say to be bold. Like, go talk to that person that's sitting by themselves. Go to the events. Go to the movie night. Go to the dance. Go do everything. Like Savannah said, just put yourself out there. Don't be scared to. That's the only way you can really find your people, your friends, and the people who are going to be your college family for the rest of your college career. I would also say don't look too into the Pinterest ideas. You don't need all that stuff.
So true. So true. My daughter's a freshman in college, and I was amazed at how much she brought with her to college just to decorate her, little tiny room. So yeah, you don't need Pinterest.
So as a former high school principal, I used to sit with my students and talk to them about how to choose a college. And there's some things to think about. Some students like to go to a really large university where there's maybe, the football games in a big stadium and that kind of thing. And then some people are maybe more attracted to a small university. And I would always ask, where do you thrive? Where do you do best? Because I personally have attended large universities where I was one of 150 in a seat. The professor never knew my name, didn't know if I was there or not. And, I did okay, I'm here. But I look back and see what our students get and what my own children who attended CCU got. And that was knowing professors. If you're missing class, I know it, I miss you, I'm wondering what's happening. If you are struggling with something, you need to talk something through, or life happens, we're here. And so those are some of the differences you get from a small university versus a large university. There isn't a good or bad, it's what works best for you. And so I was going to toss that in there.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. And then this is more of a faculty question. If a prospective student wasn't sure about teaching math or science, would that pose a problem with getting a secondary ed degree?
Well, if you're going into the secondary ed program, you would choose math or science. And so you wouldn't choose that if you didn't want to teach it. So you could choose English, you could choose social studies, you wouldn't have to choose math or science, because at the secondary level, your license is attached to a content area like that. In elementary, on the other hand, K-6, all elementary teachers do teach all the subjects, but certainly the level of content knowledge is less than it would be for a high school teacher or a middle school teacher. Any other thoughts, Professor Bulci, on that question?
No, I think you're absolutely correct on that. The secondary education degree is attached to a content area. And so that's important to choose a content area. In the elementary program, you actually graduate with a liberal arts degree, a Bachelor of Arts in Liberal Arts with licensure in elementary ed and culturally and linguistically diverse education. And so you do get training in all the different subjects because, of course, in elementary school, you teach all the different subjects.
Great. Now, the same question, only rephrased maybe. If somebody wanted to teach both math and science at the secondary level, how would that work?
You'd probably choose one of the programs, math or science. And then once you have a license, but it depends on the state, it's often the case that you can take the licensure exam, and if you pass it in the content area, you can also teach in that area, but we'd have to look at the specific state. Do you have any clarification on that?
I was going to say, if you're bringing a lot of credits in, transferring a lot of credits, it'd be possible to pick up more credits so that you could maybe have a major and a minor kind of situation. And then you could perhaps pick those both up. And that would take some very precise planning with the LDC advisor and perhaps with some input from the school of ed.
Great, thank you. And then as we sort of wrap up our time here today, I would love to hear from you guys a word of advice as these students are thinking about selecting a university. Professor Bolche, you talked about asking the question, where do you thrive? As these students, some of them are probably seniors, some of them are maybe juniors or transfers. What words of advice would you give to them as they consider the School of Education at CCU?
I'll just make a comment first. I think it's so important not to underestimate the value of a Christian education at the undergraduate level. And I know Professor Bolche and myself and our other faculty have been at both types of universities, Christian ones and secular ones. And you can get great experiences at both kinds of universities. Certainly you want to look overall at your personality, and as Tammy said, what context you think you would thrive in the most. But beyond that is the idea of learning to think from a Christian worldview is a priceless thing to develop as a person exiting high school. And it really sets a trajectory for life. We know that students that often go to secular universities learn to think in ways that are very much antithetical to Scripture. And the Bible says, keep your heart diligently, for out of it are the issues of life, and that we can have the mind of Christ. We are to take every thought captive for the knowledge of Christ. And we learn to do that as young people, and then we capitalize on that through life. And you need a great foundation that gives you confidence in Scripture, that helps you think through important decisions. It's said that we make 40,000 decisions a day, most of them very trivial, but some determine our destiny. And so it's important to be entering life and adulthood and decision making armed with a knowledge of Scripture, confidence in your faith, confidence that the Bible is our guidebook, and with a relationship with Christ that can guide you through your entire life. And you're not going to get that in a secular university. In fact, that often is the case that young people get led very much astray from their faith during those very formative years. So I would say, think carefully about where you want to go in life, and invest the time and in an educational experience that will build your faith, give you greater confidence in it, so that you can defend it and so that you can live your life in the light of it. I think that's really the most important thing, an essential one as you think about where to go to school.
So good, so good. Professor Bolche, what would you say?
Well, one of the things I love about School of Education is that we start serving from day one. We don't have to wait until we graduate. We are out there in schools, and we talk about how to live Christ. Most of the schools that we place our students in are not Christian schools. They are public schools, but we take Christ with us wherever we go to do just what Dr. Scheffel is talking about, really live Christ and have that Christian worldview. And what does that mean? And that means we love on everyone. We love on every child, every adult that we come into contact with, and that we just share the respect, and we want to not only have them feel good, but that they improve in their learning, so that they strive to learn of all of this wonderful world the Lord made. So what I would say is that CCU is just on purpose about our Christian worldview and our goal and serving others in the community for Christ. And School of Ed, we just start right off. We plop you out in the middle of the community to the tune of like 15,000 hours a semester. And so we are excited about that, and we're on purpose about it.
Awesome. And ladies, what would you say to these prospective students? Would you add anything?
I'll say something. I would just say, really pray about it. For me, I had no idea where I wanted to go. And I just really consistently prayed about it, and God just opened and closed doors, and I ended up here. And like my first day on campus, it felt like there was this weight off my shoulders. I'm like, yeah, this is where God wanted me to be. And so just pray and trust that he'll put you where you need to be.
Go ahead.
I would, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would say too, I saw that there was another question about CCU being different than other small Christian universities. And I just wanted to speak to that real quick, because I think it was mentioned prior that CCU is a Christian school. And I didn't necessarily grow up in a Christian home. So there were points where I was even challenged to kind of put God first more than I have been in my life prior. And I also looked at GCU, Grand Canyon University, that claims to be a Christian university. And I will say the difference is when I was looking at that school was you could go to chapel if you wanted to, and you had to take one world religions class. Whereas CCU, you have to have chapel credits, you have to have ministry hours in order to graduate. Like they make that a priority in your life so that while you are also a full-time student, you are full-time growing in your faith as well. And so I think that is what sets CCU apart in that aspect.
Amen. Yeah, I would definitely agree. Savannah, do you have anything?
Yeah, just to piggyback kind of off of Karis, I would say pray all the time about all the things, and also listen, because the other half of that is that while you're praying, if you're not listening to where the Lord wants you, it's not going to work, and then it's just going to make everything harder. I say that because that is me, and it was me deciding. I'm just very type A, so I wanted a black and white answer. I wanted him to write it in my planner for me. Where am I supposed to be at what time, where? And those things are lots of listening, sit and listen to that, and also be vocal about it. Do things like this where you can ask your questions, ask people, email people, be bold, and just, Karis said that earlier also. But just be bold, ask the question, and do these things to prepare yourself and to make yourself feel better. And it'll make you feel more prepared and more at ease about these decisions and things like that.
Thank you, guys. I want to thank all of our panelists for being here tonight, our students, as well as our faculty, and you, our guests. You guys are great. This is our first Sunday Night Live that we are doing for the spring with our faculty. So you guys, thank you for joining us. If you're interested in any of the other Sunday, did I say Saturday night? It's actually Sunday Night Live. If you're interested in doing any of these others, we have a whole host of them throughout the spring. So jump on there, and we're more than happy to have you join us. But if you have any questions, many of you probably do, about application process and what that looks like. If you're a prospective student, you have an enrollment counselor that is assigned to the state in which you live. And so you can actually go right on our website and you can find your enrollment counselor. Katya, as I mentioned, hello, Katya, is one of those. And she would love to chat with you guys about that as well. So please, if you don't know who your enrollment counselor is, you can find it on the website, or you can start your application if you haven't done that already. You can do that right on ccu.edu/apply. Make sure that you pick traditional undergraduate instead of adult undergraduate, because you want to live on campus and have the community and social life. So please go ahead and do that. And thank you again for joining us tonight for Sunday Night Live. It's been a pleasure. And thanks again to our panel. Have a good night.
Thank you, Skip. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Hope we see you soon.
Bye-bye.